Slavish is nature, building, pulling down, creating, destroying, chasing every material particle from form to form, ever changing, ever beautiful. This grand show is eternal. It is always sunrise somewhere. The dew is never all dried at once. A shower is forever falling. Vapor is ever rising. Eternal sunrise, eternal sunset, eternal dawn and gloaming on sea and continents and islands, each in its turn as the round earth rolls.
You have to get out in the mountains and along the streams to really know how they work. And then you can begin to understand how they have to be protected, how we have to learn about them, how we can use them. The overall reason for there being a University of California Natural Reserve System is that in order to teach about the land or to learn about it as the scientists do, you have to be on it. You can't be in a classroom. Well, it was started back in the 60s because we who were at the urban university campus of UCLA began to see our opportunities to teach about wild California disappearing. And so we began to figure out what we could do about it and ultimately came up with a statewide plan for all of the campuses, which would encompass the whole diversity of California. That is to say, we have beautiful reserves in the Colorado Desert area, which is our lowest desert. We have representatives in the Mojave Desert, a little higher community. We have them on the coastal plains. We have them in the redwood forests. We have a representative of one of the ancient lakes of California. We have one of California's most beautiful streams is represented in the reserve system, and a whole diversity of smaller environments that are tremendously important to understanding and teaching about California's diversity.
The university has made these reserves available for all of higher education. So we get people, students and researchers from the community colleges, from the private colleges, from the California State University branches, and even from the high schools in some cases.
Why is it important to save all the diversity of California? The processes on the land, of course, vary tremendously from different habitat to different habitat. There are entirely different sets of animals that live in the different areas, and they follow the vegetation. The vegetation ranges in California all the way from the deepest rainforest down to the starkest desert and up to the alpine communities on the tops of the mountains to glaciers and so on. And every one of those things has its own set of different processes, and it also has its own set of problems. How do you manage to protect, for example, a glacier is a very different thing from trying to understand how to deal with a sand dune. And we have to deal with all of those things in response to the needs of California. We say that the role of the reserve system is not the conservation of land. We're not in the business of assembling lands to preserve them. But in fact, what the reserve system does is absolutely essential to conservation of land. It takes students out and researchers and poets and anyone who has some reason to go out in the natural environment, and it lets them see firsthand what goes on there. It lets them look at the plants and the animals and to feel the vibrance and the magnificence of the wild world, and they come away knowing exactly why they should preserve the land. Teaching in the field, out on the mountain or alongside the stream can be magic. And the reason is that you let the student face reality, him or herself. You put them up next to a bug or a tree or a process, and they can see it and experience it for themselves. And that's something you can never do in a classroom. A couple of 100 feet thick. You don't want to have to tell it to them. You want them to experience it. And if they do experience it, even tiny little things become important and things that they'll remember all their careers. On the other hand, if they take them from books, they're going to be forgotten for the most part and not used.
As a student, I think that the reserve system is very important in that it allows students to go into the field and to learn many different techniques that they would not otherwise be able to learn in the laboratory. Just the ability to observe animals in the field is a very important process.
These guys are really squirmers, and they're also biters. So be prepared.
Some of the most wonderful teaching experiences I've ever had have been on the reserves. I remember one where we watched an evening primrose open. Have you ever sat down and watched a flower open, where you could see the petals unfold, twisting, and finally the whole beautiful flower expose itself to the dusk in this case, and then to have a great hawk moth come flying in to pollinate it directly after it was open, and then to look at that flower and realize that it only stays open for one day, and then it falls away, and there you were watching that whole process. You can read about that all day, and it won't ever come alive in the same way that it does when you see it actually happening.
In the classroom, a student's relationship with a professor is necessarily formal. The professor is up in front of the class and they're lecturing to the students. And it's a one-way flow of information. But once you get out into the field, mostly people relax a lot. And your ability to communicate with a professor is on a much different level. You have many more exciting experiences which you can share in. And it's a much more dynamic interaction than you would ever be able to get in the classroom.
As a scientist, you're completely limited if you have to do your work in the laboratory. You simply have to be out there where the processes are going on. You have to be out there where the real behavior is happening, because you never, ever know all of the things that influence it. And you simply can't import all that into the laboratory and make it work. In my estimation, behavior, ecology, and all of the other disciplines that are concerned with the natural environment are extremely difficult to import into the laboratory and get away with it.
The Natural Reserve System is really important because students are able to get first-hand experience with biology, which is something that cannot happen in the classroom. And for researchers, it's the most important resource which California has to offer, because in a time in which the habitat is decreasing and we're experiencing a lot of habitat deterioration, these are pristine areas where you can go and ask questions about biology in which would otherwise not be possible.
The benefits to the outside world are numerous. When you study in the natural environment, you can learn how things operate in nature, and from that learn how to apply this in agriculture, in control of pests and diseases, in growing crops in marginal lands, in maintaining the urban environment. There are a great many benefits, and these benefits are going to continue. They are not stopping with this research. The research is giving us more and more information, and it builds up to a bigger body of knowledge. It's a bonus that we're getting from our investment.
As our global problems grow in the world at large, it seems certain to me that the reserve system is going to become more and more important because it provides a baseline against which we can measure these problems. It's a way of looking at the world from California and seeing these kinds of changes that we know are happening today.
Nature's tables are spread and fires burning. You must go warm yourselves and eat. Thousands of tired, nerve-shaken, over-civilized people are beginning to find out that going to the mountains is going home. That wilderness is a necessity, and that mountain parks and reservations are useful not only as fountains of timber and irrigating rivers, but as fountains of life.